you've all been waiting for.
It's time again for another episode of the Stikker Podcast with your hosts, Nikki and Steven.
Yo, 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 what is up? Welcome to another edition of the Stikker Podcast.
You're a giant dork, and I'm Nikki.
And I'm Steven. We are back. We took a week off of the podcast because sometimes in life, with children,
Shit
with holidays,
happens.
all kinds of stuff just gets pretty chaotic. And, you know, it happens. It happens.
All right, it happens. I get it.
And with summer approaching, schedules are going to get even more tricky.
It's chaos.
Because that means the children are going to be home every day, all day.
Yep. And additional children that I'm watching a couple times a week to help out. Plus, it really does take the pressure off of me, because then they all entertain each other, and I don't have to do as much. So I highly recommend.
I'm in a lot of pain, by the way.
You're a pain in my booty.
I'm hurting.
Why?
Randomly, you know, this kind of stuff happens. I do a combat sport. I work out a lot. I'm very active. I do all kinds of stuff. And, you know, just riding the stationary bike just for a warm-up. And out of nowhere, I feel like Long Claw gets shoved through the back of my shoulder. And I become completely just out of commission. I can't move. It's horrible.
Egret shot an arrow through your back.
I don't know how it happened while I was on the stationary bike warming up, but yeah, I got a pinched nerve and this thing hurts. But it's all good. It's all part of getting older and being active.
Did it help when I rubbed that stuff in it?
I didn't do a damn thing.
Oh, okay.
Tried this healing balm stuff, and I think it's a lot deeper than just a muscle.
We need to get you some CBD oil.
It's a nerve thing. That's not going to fix it. But how are you doing?
That's what it does. Anyways, life is freaking chaos right now. Anybody with a thyroid issue, let me know. Speak out. Talk about it. Hypothyroidism sucks. I'm so tired. But hopefully these new meds will be adjusting soon and I'll feel like a regular person again. But at the moment, I am tired. I can't even get through a dang 2-hour workout. Jeez.
That's pretty brutal.
It is. Like, I literally maybe 35 minutes in cycle class.
When you used to crank out an hour, no problem.
Tuesday, yeah, hour, 90 minutes. I used to do an hour and a half of cycle.
Wow.
And it was like, yay, let's keep going. Nope.
Well, hopefully today's conversation will make you feel better, because I think it's going to be
choke somebody.
I think it's going to be a fun one. It's a very interesting topic, because obviously you could tell by the title of this, we're going to break down Game of Thrones versus Breaking Bad. And obviously Breaking Bad has been off the air for a long time, but for us, it was brand new. Mm-hmm. And we literally finished, without question, at least in my book, I think you agree, 2 of the best shows that we've ever watched.
Totes.
Within weeks of each other.
Yes.
And it's just so crazy that we wrapped up Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. So, like, just the way it worked out.
That couldn't have been more perfect. Like, you couldn't have timed that if you tried.
Yeah, it's so insane how the schedule worked out to land like that. Because, I mean, both those shows are highly, highly emotional.
Yeah.
They took a lot out of, speaking for myself, they took a lot out of me. And just the idea that we finished both of them so close together, it just made total sense for us to, you know, kind of, they're completely different shows.
Nothing alike.
But we were able to pick some categories and some questions and topics to kind of force the conversation, because they are arguably 2 of the greatest shows of all time. They're without question the 2 best shows I've ever watched. Same. And I've watched, there's some good shows on our list that we've watched, between like Dexter and The Walking Dead, which is still on, and
True Blood.
I Love House, and we've never watched Soprano or The Wire or some of these other shows that are historically in that conversation for best of all time. But these two shows, Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad, they were spectacular. And just the idea that we finished them so close together, it just made it so easy to break these down. And, this is meant to be a fun conversation. I know both fan bases are very hardcore. They're very much both into their shows.
Yes.
The ones who pick Breaking Bad are going to die on the hill for Breaking Bad, and those for Game of Thrones are going to die on their shield for Game of Thrones. And, I don't know where your brain is at this, but at the end, we're going to try to pick which one we like better, which is what this is about.
Nope.
It's not about which is better because that's so subjective. Mm-hmm. It's really about which one we enjoyed more or enjoy more. Mm-mm. And, gonna start off with we've got we did ask y'all on the YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube, in the community tab, which is where we keep our schedule and a lot of other information, and we like to pull you guys on stuff if we're looking for info.
Yep.
And we asked you straight
we're
up,
using you,
right? Breaking Bad versus Game of Thrones, which one do you prefer? And there were so many comments that it was.
How many were there?
I think there were like 90 something.
Wow.
There were a lot. So it was very hard to pick through those and pick the ones that to use today, but we've got like 11 comments, 5 for Breaking Bad, 5 for Game of Thrones.
That would be 10.
Which we're going to, and I have another one, which is 11. Which we're going to get to the comment at the end, but we're going to kind of kick things off with this comment because I feel like it's very relevant. From Michael Ray.
Rie1. Reay1.
Yeah. If I may, I don't see how there can be a comparison between Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. They were both brilliantly written, but covered so many different avenues. In my opinion, given the lack of characters and storylines in Breaking Bad, it was seriously astonishing how such little characters that they made each character evolve without overbearing each scene. Now, Game of Thrones obvious fantasy, which had many characters, but also was brilliantly written to have each character be influenced or at least pivotal cog in the meshing. Is that right? I should have made this font a little bigger. Storyline that had the relevance outside Jon Snow being a Targaryen, because that meant nothing in the end, which don't even get me started. It actually did mean something in the end because it's what Brandon used, but that's a whole different conversation. Both are worthy of crappy weather, weekend on a couch, good cocktail, and a marathon.
True that.
I prefer both over any other two series. Thank you. And I think that's a great way to kick off the conversation because they don't deserve to be compared against each other.
No, they don't.
Because
they really don't.
One is total fantasy and the other is very much real life. But again, like we said at the beginning, we finished them at the same time. They're two of the best shows that we've ever watched. And we thought it would be fun to kind of compare these.
They built our subscriber base.
Well, yeah, I mean, both shows definitely had an impact on our lives without question. And an impact on what we're doing on the YouTube channel. So it only made sense to just have this conversation. But before we get into this, I mean, I'm going into this conversation with the mindset that I did not hate season 8 of Game of Thrones as much as everyone else. I enjoyed it very much. There are obvious things that if you decide to throw at me could absolutely get me fired up and angry. Just there's plenty of things that's wrong with it. It was 100% absolutely rushed.
No ranting.
No ranting about what was wrong with season 8. That's not going to happen today. But I acknowledge all the issues. I acknowledge what is wrong and the holes and the storytelling. And it really all just boils down to just they didn't have enough episodes. That last season deserved to be 12 episodes.
100%, if not multiple seasons.
So just throwing that out there that I did not hate season 8.
I mean, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever watched. I just wish that it was longer, not so rushed, and more details. Yeah,
and if there was more episodes, the story would have been fleshed out a lot better.
Yeah.
But that's my mindset. Even if I hated season 8, if I despised it like a lot of people are out there saying, I'm not grading Game of Thrones. I know the ending of a show is very important, but there are other shows that we have watched. I'm not going to say which ones because I don't want to ruin it for anyone if there's anyone watching them. There are other shows that have ended really horribly that doesn't impact the overall enjoyment of the show. Like, yeah, it sucks that the end didn't work.
Right.
But I'm not going to let 6 episodes ruin my entire Game of Thrones journey.
That's true. That's true. And I think, I feel like that's what people are allowing that to happen.
Yeah,
it's like,
which is...
No, but wait, we had like...
Which is very unfortunate.
some seasons are debatable for some folks. I like them all.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem.
There were clear story holes in 7 and 8. There was absolutely no...
Yes.
There's no debate
don't get me
about
wrong.
it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away from my personal enjoyment of the overall series. And I've been on record many, many times through our Breaking Bad journey that I felt the show was flawless on many levels.
100%.
So we'll go into the conversation. That's where my head is at as we jump into this. And the first thing that I'm going to present is some stuff that you loved about Breaking Bad. General stuff that you loved.
Okay. I think that we can both agree the writing was like top notch, like amazing. Everything that you saw was intentional. If there was a cup knocked over, like that was on purpose. If there was a bag, that was on purpose. A color of an outfit on purpose. After
They weren't fucking around on that show.
If you hear any squeaks, it's the chair. I swear. It's not me. But looking up the color wheel of Breaking Bad and how they made from bright color to dark color based on the progression of the character was just what?
Yeah, it was wild.
So much thought and attention to detail was in there, and it was just perfect.
The story for me was the first thing I wrote down. The overall story from episode 1 to the finale.
Right.
I thought the story was flawless. I'm going to use that word a lot, probably talking about Breaking Bad, because for the most part, obviously there were probably a little things that are just really? They made 2 planes crash right over Walter's house. There's some stuff in there that's probably
happen.
A little.
It can happen.
It just the coincidence was too perfect. But there are things that suspends disbelief a little bit. But overall, top to bottom, in a general sense, I thought the story was fantastic.
Yes.
What's next?
I'm with you. That's kind of.
Okay, because
I
got a
talked about
list.
The writing, the acting, amazing.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of the acting, Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul, just to spotlight them, 2 main actors of the show, Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, they were amazing. Jesse's just constant, just up and down about his feelings and his emotions, and just he's feeling like this one day and then he's feeling like this the next day, and it's just the way he portrayed it and made it so believable was just so crazy. And obviously just
I don't want to be on that roller coaster.
Yeah. And obviously Walter White and his journey was just absolute insanity, regardless of how you overall feel about the guy. But, because he's a bad dude. But it was still amazing. Another thing that I jotted down was the cinematography.
Oh,
the visuals of that show and the creativity that they had with the camera angles and where they put the camera and their time lapses and all that stuff. As someone who loves visual, that considering that it was real life, there was no CGI, there was no special effects, there was nothing extra added to the shots. It was
filters.
Beautiful. There might have been filters, but there was no computer CGI.
Oh no, you don't add an extra.
It's not like a Game of Thrones thing
where
we're in this fake land that was created, which was still amazing. But the fact that they were able to make Albuquerque, New Mexico look like one of the most beautiful places on earth. It was just
not
so cool.
Saying that it isn't.
I've been there. It's not the greatest place ever.
Wow, dude.
It's the desert. It's not like we live in the greatest place ever.
Okay.
It's not like we're on the beach.
Just saying.
But yeah, because it's the desert and it is what it is. But yeah, they were able to make Albuquerque look absolutely gorgeous and just really, really amazing cinematography. Like you said, everything that we saw in every scene, like even just an episode about a fly, like they made a fly important.
An entire episode.
Like
they made it an entire
that's just crazy
episode.
And you know, the unpredictability and the impactful moments in this episode, like for example, like the 737 down over Albuquerque. The fact that they were able to use the title of like 5 episodes within a season to tell a story about what's going to happen at the end.
Nuts.
It's just like,
Nuts.
that's genius.
Yeah.
That is an absolute genius to like weave that into your story and have it be ultimately the reason why we're seeing all these certain cold opens in these very specific episodes. And, you know, box cutters moment, the crawl space moment, Gus getting blown up moment. Like, there's
that
just
was so bomb.
yeah, the hell I see what you did there. There's just moments that are, you don't expect them. Even though I nailed the prediction that Walt set up the bomb on Gus's wheelchair or Tuco's wheelchair, or not Tuco, Tio's wheelchair to blow up Gus.
Yeah.
Was
how many characters can we go through before we get to the right character?
Exactly. It's like the yelling at the kids. It's like I even start with the cat's name sometime, and I get their name wrong all the way through.
Bella. I mean, you know what? Shut the other one. The other one.
And one thing that I would have to imagine, based off of the shows that we've watched, sticking the landing on the finale of the entire series is hard. Like people, I've never seen it, but I know the Sopranos finish was bad. People complain about the Friends ending. People complain about the Dexter ending. People complain about lots and lots and lots of finales. And people complain about the Game of Thrones ending. Breaking Bad's ending, with the exception of Jesse driving off, not knowing where he's going, they tied up every storyline and it ended perfectly.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed watching that show.
No, not at all.
Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt, we're going to bring this back just because. Nothing. It was great.
So now jumping over to Game of Thrones, what are some of the things that you loved about Game of Thrones?
Can we all say it together? Can we say dragons? All together now. I mean, that was just dope. I love Jon. I love Daenerys. I love that it was fantasy. That's it, yo.
It separated you from real life, right?
Exactly. You could go off into this, mystical land and just, theorize anything you want. Yeah. Basically. It could happen.
My first thing was the cinematography, kind of like in Breaking Bad, but different type of cinematography. They were obviously in these grand locations, and it was a sandbox for them to play in. Every location that they were in, watching the behind the scenes thing was just so that was spectacular. Visually, obviously with the help of special effects and some CGI and some really powerful computer programs, the show was beautiful.
Yes.
Everything about it was just spectacular looking. It was big. It felt big.
Yeah.
And everything about it, because it was a world. Like one of the comments, I don't think I used it. We'll find out. Like Breaking Bad was a show. Game of Thrones was a world.
That's true.
Which it's pretty crazy. The music, some of the best music in any piece of content that I've ever watched in my entire life, movie or show.
I'd like to rewrite my answer, please. Everything he said.
I mean, the music, just going back to like the Red Wedding, it just sets the tone for what's coming. And
I can still hear her screaming.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple pieces of music that get me going in terms of emotions when it comes to movies or TV shows. And I don't know exactly what the name of the song is, but it's the Stark theme. You know what it is.
It's not the Rain.
Reigns of Castamere is the Lannister. But the Starks theme song, the one that fits them, is right up there in terms of music from. Oh, now I'm drawing a blank on the other song. The Star Wars one. I'm totally drawing a blank. I have a computer in front of me. I'm going to look it up. I'm not going to look it up. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's the two moons when Luke's staring off into the sunset. Binary Sunset is the name of the Star Wars song. Like the Game of Thrones one is right up. Like those are
we
two.
A bad fan because we don't know the name of the actual song?
I just named the one for Star Wars.
I'm talking about the other one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to remember. There's a lot of songs. But it's that song is up there with Binary Sunset in terms of like it immediately hits a nerve in me when I hear it.
It's my ringtone on my phone.
Well, that's the theme. That's the Game of Thrones theme song.
Oh.
They're different.
Edit that out.
The emotions Game of Thrones brought out of me. Obviously, Breaking Bad made me angry, and I ranted a lot about Walter White.
Yeah. Same.
But my range of emotion that Game of Thrones pulled out of me.
Same.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't think I would cry so much on freaking video. I'm like, are you kidding me, you guys? Sorry. Also, but also not sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been my gauge lately as I've grown up and become an adult in terms of the content that I like to watch. If you could make me emotional, whether it's sad, happy, or angry, or anything else that goes into any of that, I feel like that's a sign of a good show for me these days because it makes me, it shows me that I'm completely invested.
Yes. I mean, if I'm sitting there like thinking about something completely different, then you lost me.
The dragons and the direwolves, I absolutely love both of them.
How did I not write direwolves?
Yeah, I don't know how you missed that.
The puppies.
The history of the world we were watching is dope.
Oh, I can't wait for the prequel.
The prequel is going to be really awesome because it's going to dive deep into some of the history. And again, just like in Breaking Bad, the shocking moments that hit you when you were not expecting them. And specifically, I wrote down Ned's beheading. Even though we were spoiled on it, it was still one of those like...
It was still, you really weren't...
I didn't fully believe the spoiler. I'm like, there's no way they're killing this dude in episode 9 of the whole show.
The first season.
Yeah.
It's like, you're dumb.
Why
would you say that?
That's kind of when it was clear that this was a different show.
Yeah.
And with the addition of Ned, it was...
That was... I mean, that's
Drogo.
The answer to your question of what some things that I didn't like.
We'll get to that. But more surprises like the Red Wedding. Like that... It's so funny because... prior to the Red Wedding, I made comments about like, oh, this is a much nicer wedding than the last one we watched.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was horrible. It was one of the worst things that we've ever seen on TV or movies at all.
Yeah.
Hold the Door was one of those insanely creative things that I would have never in a million years would have figured that out. And the fact that they, like the way they made that happen with Bran horging into younger Hodor, and that's how he became the way he was by saying Hodor over and over and over again. And then his end mission in life was to hold the door. It's like, that shit is mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. And then the whole thing with Jon's identity was just shocking. Which was my favorite episode of the whole series when we found out who he was. And the last thing I wrote down for stuff that I love about Game of Thrones. You ready for it?
Everybody prepare your eyeballs.
Jon Snow. Oh my God. Jon Snow. I love my dude Jon Snow.
Anybody who's listening on headphones, I apologize every single time that he freaking says Jon Snow. Good Lord.
I'm not saying it that loud. I'm saying it
this time.
Just deep. Jon Snow. I love my dude Jon Snow. Jon was, we'll get into that. But yeah, Jon, one of my favorite characters in the history of anything I've ever watched.
Totes.
So, some stuff you did not love about Breaking Bad.
About Breaking Bad?
Mm-hmm. That's the next thing. I'll just jump in because I have it ready, unless you have it ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, go.
The defense of Walt's actions.
Oh, that's not the show.
I don't care.
That's the Walter White fans.
I understand. Hey, man, I get it. He was an amazing actor. He was an amazing character. Like, dude, rocked it. But I can't defend his actions. I cannot. At first, I tried to. And then I was like, oh, hell to the no. This is all happening all because of him. This is all his fault. Don't at me.
We've already excuse me. Jeez. Got a bubble in my throat in the middle.
Walter White just jumped down your throat.
Yeah, we've had this conversation already. We don't need to.
I know. That's why I put on their unpopular opinion.
Yeah,
And the good thing about opinions is everybody's got one.
Yes, that is true, and you're all entitled to your opinion, which is the greatest, even the better part about opinions.
Until you start calling names, and then you lost me. I'm not listening to you any longer.
Yes, it was actually really hard for me to find something that I didn't like about Breaking Bad.
That was it. Literally, that's it, and that's not even about the show.
It's like I pulled up lists. I pulled up like what people have written about the show. I'm like, what was bad about Breaking Bad? And like people pulled some shit out of their asses that was like, all right, you're just
maybe sometimes it hits a little too close to home.
Yeah,
it's a little scary in that way.
I don't know if that's something I don't like about it though.
No, I couldn't fault the show for
some of these
putting a spotlight on real life.
Some of these articles that were written about like the bad of Breaking Bad, I'm like, you're just reaching. You're just looking for clicks. I did write something down though, but it ended up being a positive.
Okay.
I was bummed out that the show ended.
Ah, true that.
But again, it ended in the perfect way, the perfect amount of episodes, the perfect amount of seasons. So it's really hard to be like, oh, it's over. And the only reason that I'm like put that down is because you just want that show to keep going.
I know, it was so good.
Because it was so good. And we are watching Better Call Saul, which is great.
If you don't know that, where have you been?
Yeah. Probably not on our YouTube channel then. You're probably just, you know, podcast listener. But yeah, go check out our reaction videos. They're a lot of fun. But we are watching the prequel. A lot of fun so far. We're only a couple episodes in, but it's pretty awesome. But yeah, like it was really hard to find something that I didn't love about Breaking Bad. But what about Game of Thrones? What's some stuff that you did not love about Game of Thrones?
I mean, it was kind of one of your answers that they kill off some pretty friggin' amazing characters. And it's like, I thought, they're not going to make it to the end. What? I thought that they were important. What the fuck? I really liked that one.
Yeah,
nope.
I specifically wrote down because I wrote down the same thing. But I view it as like a positive because it's what separates this show from other shows.
It's true, but
like I wrote down Robb Stark, Ned Stark, and Oberyn Martell. Like those are three characters, and I mean you could put Drogo in there too. But like those are three characters that I specifically really connected with that did not get enough episodes. Like I get that they needed to die to tell the story that they were telling. But yeah, like losing those characters so early on when, again, you've grown so attached to them.
You grow attached to these characters pretty fast.
That shit was savage.
Or I grow attached to these characters pretty fast.
That shit was savage.
Yeah.
But it also makes the show so special.
Yes.
What else? Was there anything else that you put down?
That's basically it. I mean, I'm mad that the Targaryen name really didn't do a ton.
It was really just a chess piece.
Eyes. Yeah.
It was just really just a piece for Brandon to use to get into position.
I mean, after it was like, you know,
we got into an argument with this at work actually on Tuesday.
It was just like it felt like such a pivotal moment that just.
But it was only a pivotal moment because Brandon wanted it to be.
Well,
you got to look at it that way.
That's some bullshit right there.
I mean.
It was emphasized to us like so much, and it was like, oh, I figured it out. Now what?
The thing is, all the perfect people knew.
And they didn't. What?
But that's the thing. Brandon made sure the right people knew.
So that they hated Daenerys.
Sansa was never going to spread that word. Like she didn't need to.
Right.
It got the thing out. Varys never got his messages out, obviously. Tyrion, it didn't end up mattering. Like, Brandon knew exactly what he was doing by telling who he told and spreading the word the way he did, because it was just all, and it's sad that that's ultimately what it was used for, was just a pawn in his game of Thrones to get to the throne, or, I mean, the throne's gone, but for him to become king, like that's all it was there for, which is sad.
Yeah.
But my other thing that I put down that I don't love, I don't like that it was rushed.
Yeah.
I don't like that they decided to do only 6 episodes. They could have made those episodes 2 hours long, and it still wouldn't have been enough to tell the story.
100%.
It should have been 12. Like, if we're being real, like normal TV shows, it should have been like 10, 12. I think 12 episodes at 90 minutes each would have been great.
We've talked about how I didn't like that it was rushed.
Yeah.
Even after the first episode, it's like...
That was the first thing you said.
It's like, oh, it feels rushed.
It's like, oh, wow.
It's like, oh, all that build up, and it's like,
That was a lot. Yeah. That was a lot, is what you kept saying.
Yeah.
What about your favorite storylines from Game of Thrones?
Let's see. Let me check my notes. Favorite storyline, Game of Thrones. Originally, the lineage of Jon Snow. That was a really good story, I felt, until it fucked it up for me. Brienne's story
Oh, yeah.
was amazing. Drogo and Dany, the dragons, Arya. It's hard to like narrow it down to like one specific answer.
There were a
I
lot.
liked every storyline.
There were a lot of storylines in Game of Thrones.
I just minus Jon not being king, but whatever, it's fine.
I wrote down 3, even though I could have probably wrote down 7.
Oh yeah, like every character's
Arya's storyline from start to finish is probably my favorite. Just because I've said it before, like she started out as like basically a nothing kid in the first season, who was just running around trying to be like, she wanted to be one of the boys. She didn't want to be like, she didn't want to be in like the Sansa class, becoming a lady.
Be prim and proper.
She wanted to show that she could fire her arrows and be more accurate than her brother. And,
that's not who she is.
right. All the way ending to the point where she's the most savage, skilled fighter on the show.
Yep.
Her journey from that point to the end, I would love to know where she's going and what she's going to go do. But
who she's going to kill.
Her storyline and like her relationship with the Hound was great. And just like her journey overall from start to finish was just so much fun to watch.
I agree.
The other thing was Theon's redemption story.
Oh, I didn't put that down. That's such a good, yeah.
That was one of the really, 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 really high points of season 8 for me, because it totally came out of left field.
Yeah.
I totally did not expect Theon to have some of the most emotional moments in all of the final season of Game of Thrones.
Right.
The way we were shitting on him early on in the show.
Absolutely.
He was a total prick. The way he killed those 2 kids and then lied about it. And then he gets captured by Ramsay and goes through all that stuff. And then you start feeling bad for him when he's like going through this Reek storyline. And then he meets back up with his family, and you know, it kind of that's kind of where it started. And then in season 8, he, you know, his moment with Yara was spectacular. His moment with Sansa was great.
I love that
His
one.
death, even though it sucks that Brandon knew like what was going to happen, his death was like, it was fitting for him.
Bran, you little shit.
Because he was in Winterfell defending and fighting with the Starks, which is where he belonged. And I thought Theon's storyline was just, it was just so cool. And then of course,
Damn, your answers are way better than mine.
I put a lot of thought into this.
I thought I did too.
And then my last one was, I really, even though I hated how he got to the end, like I didn't like how they got from point A to point B in the final season with Jon. Like I like where he ended because that's what he wanted.
I think Jon could do no wrong in your eyes.
Of course not. He's my dude. He's Mr. Honorable, Mr. Noble. I wish he would have lied about killing Daenerys because no one would have known otherwise.
Right. They could have just said that Drogon, she took off on Drogon and she said, that's it.
He's incapable of lying. And that's, you know, as dumb as that may seem, like it's a thing to respect. But his storyline,
that's called integrity.
All the way through was just so fascinating to me. And then the reveal in what was my favorite episode of the entire series and him getting the King in the North moment.
Yeah.
Just, it was just something that really, really landed with me. Like, his character was just, it was great. And I can't not love my Jon Snow.
I saw something funny. I think it was sent to me. I don't know if Eva sent it to me. Eva, let me know if you sent it to me. Or did I send it to you? I can't remember. Basically, it's a postcard of John and
Thurman?
Thurman.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I'm like, redhead. God, it's been a while since we watched the show.
It's
Thurman
been 2
and
weeks.
John on a postcard, and it's being held by Grey Worm.
Oh yeah, that
Greetings
yes.
from the north.
Yes, that's funny. That was very funny. I saw that.
I was like, oh shit, that's hilarious.
But yes, even though I said it a couple times, I was very let down by how they used John in the final season. But ultimately, again, I'm not going to let a few episodes completely ruin my bromance with Jon Snow.
Yeah.
So, what was your favorite storyline from Breaking Bad? That was an easy one for me. Watching Walter White break bad.
I put not sure because everything.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to pick one storyline, it was Walter White's Breaking Bad. Going from a guy who was working at a car wash, teaching high school chemistry, finding out that he had cancer, deciding to start cooking meth, and evolving into what can be argued as probably the greatest meth cooker and dealer in the history of the world. It was just like his arc and his story and his just so many moments of gray in terms of his character development.
Yeah.
And just the moments of like, holy fuck, I hate you, to holy shit, that was actually a good decision, but then immediately ruined by a really terrible decision. Like,
and you fucking talk too much.
it was when he's
Stop. When you're lying, I can tell.
only in certain scenarios though. It was always
when he fucking talks too
it was
much,
really
you're like,
just-
dude, stop talking.
It was really like the Skylar lies. Because there were other moments where he was lying to other people and he was cool.
When he was like talking to Gus, it's like, no, stop right there. You're overstepping your bounds. Stop.
But yeah.
I swear to God, I love this show. I swear I love Breaking Bad.
It's just a sign of a good character that he's got you so fired up.
It's just like when you ask me about these questions, I'm like, there's so much. How am I supposed to narrow this down? I can't think of like one specific thing. Are you nuts?
It is very difficult.
I've spent days, like a week trying to figure out answers to these questions. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I get
very
overwhelmed. I'm sorry.
Like Breaking Bad's obviously a much more simple story compared to Game of Thrones.
The episode where he fucking blows up the car.
That was episode 2, episode 1 or 2.
No, it doesn't. When he takes the car that he bought for Junior.
Oh, that one. I thought you meant like at the beginning where he put the
what?
At the he put the squeegee.
Yeah, no, that was dope. But
that was the first sign of him like, dude, like
No.
I actually went back and watched our compilation from last year that we posted.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up.
And there was I really liked my line because when I'm like, this is the moment where he officially gives zero fucks. Because that was basically it. He had that encounter with that annoying ass dude, and he was just like, I'm gonna blow up his fucking car.
Yeah, no, but like when after he purchased the car for Junior and Skylar said, you have to take this back, it looks bad. And instead of taking it back, he decided to do a bunch of donuts in a parking lot and then blow it up. I think we all witnessed my rant there. I was so mad because as a responsible adult who respects my spouse, motherfucker, what? So, sorry. What
was your least favorite storyline in Breaking Bad?
When Walter blew up his car. I didn't like
I picked Marie.
Same.
Okay. I thought her whole klepto thing was...
Dude, get out of my... I said Marie being a klepto. Yeah. You're a dick. Get out of my notes.
Well, you got that answer right then.
Right?
You were right this time.
Oh, okay. I was right.
Yeah,
like,
I mean...
In the grand scheme of things, what does it fucking matter?
Yeah, if I had to
mean, I understand that, there was a total reason why. It created a rift in between Marie and Skylar. Sorry, am I talking too much into the mic?
No,
I'm
you're
getting
good.
all heated.
You're good.
You start talking about Walter White's bad decisions and I get upset. But yeah, I mean,
If I had to pick something, like you kind of said, it didn't really seem like it mattered.
it did.
That much. Like it did.
It did, but it didn't.
Because everything in the show matters.
Yes, exactly.
But again, I picked a bunch of categories for us to kind of discuss, and there has to be something that you didn't love from Breaking Bad. And
That was it.
Marie was historically a fairly annoying character.
Yes.
Consistently, she was one of the more
Minerals,
annoying.
Marie. Minerals.
So yeah, if I had to pick any of the storylines that I didn't love from Breaking Bad, it was that. What about Game of Thrones? Least favorite storylines? Bran.
Bran can suck it.
I mean, how wild is it that the dude missed an entire season and he was still named the king?
Right? What the fuck? You know what? I think that maybe it would have like turned it around for me if they showed him warging into Drogon. If that,
Like
I
during
think that
Daenerys'
would have.
raid?
No, after.
Oh, after.
So that showed us where Drogon
Oh,
was.
that part. Okay.
Yeah, like when he's like, Podrick's like, wheel me away, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to know, okay, where's this warging ability, yo? So.
I picked two storylines that kind of annoyed the shit out of me from Game of Thrones. Maureen, I thought they were there way too long. Obviously, it was all part of the story. Like, it had to play out that way. And I know it's a lot different in the books, but there was just too much time for them to kill in the show.
Yeah.
That she couldn't just ditch out Maureen and the whole Slaver's Bay story and just go straight into Westeros, even though that's probably what she wanted to do, and she might have been better off if she actually just did that. But the idea that they were just there so long, and it just felt like it dragged for me.
Well, they had to show her hooking up with Dario.
Who we never ever saw again.
I know. There you go. Another storyline.
Yeah.
Dario, what happened to him? He's just chilling in Marine still?
He got dumped.
The love of my life is now dead because John killed her?
Yeah. No revenge.
Heartbreak.
And then the other one I wrote down was Dorne.
Yes.
That was... It was another one of those storylines that didn't feel like it had that much of an impact on the overall story. Like, obviously, it led to Marcella having issues, and like Jamie went there with Bronn, and it was just, I did not love. And I heard, again, another thing that I heard was really good actually in the books. I just did not love that storyline.
Okay.
So if you had to pick between the two shows, which show do you believe, if you had to pick one storyline from both shows, what was the best storyline?
I can't answer that question.
Pick one.
I cannot.
I'm picking one. You have to pick one.
Go for it. You pick. I'm not picking.
I'm picking Walter White Breaking Bad as the best storyline between both shows.
Not the evolution of Jon Snow?
No, I mean, just because, like, it goes to the idea of that word flawless that I keep using. Walter White as a character, from start to finish, regardless of what your opinion is of him and his actions, whether you think he's a good guy doing good things, or you think he's a heel doing bad things, or he's a mix of everything, I feel like from start to finish, his storyline was flawless. It was perfect. It really had no holes. Everything about it made sense. There was no question marks. I feel like most of the storylines there are storylines that I enjoy more, which we'll get to at the end of all of this. But in terms of what I think is the better storyline, I think Walter White is one of the best storylines of anything I've ever watched ever.
Can I just say something? I feel like Game of Thrones 1 through 7 was my all-time favorite. And then when did we start watching Breaking Bad?
When we were done with Game of Thrones.
Okay. So I feel like
a couple weeks after.
Game of Thrones was my all-time favorite. And then we started watching Breaking Bad. And it's really hard to pick between the two because
we'll
I
have
have
that
such a love
conversation.
for the both.
We'll have our conversation about the overall.
And I'm
at
such
the
a
end.
people pleaser. I don't want to piss anybody off. So if I say one thing and I don't say the other, somebody's going to get mad, and I'm not that. I'm not that bitch.
So one of the highlights in both shows, undeniable, no debate, both shows have some of the greatest characters in all of cinema or television. Regardless of what you believe about either show, there is no denying that these two shows have some of the greatest characters ever written. So,
Yes.
who are some of your favorite characters from Game of Thrones?
Daenerys,
Okay.
Jon, Tyrion, Brienne, Bronn, Arya, Sansa, Theon, Ned.
I got a long list too, because there's so many.
Like it could just get Rick. Really?
Wrong
show. Rob. Greywind.
So
Nymeria.
you gotta get the direwolves in there. So my
Shag
list,
Dog
of course,
Summer.
starting off with Jon Snow,
Ghost.
then Arya, Cersei, Jaime, Brienne, Tyrion, Theon, Sir Davos,
Oh fuck, Sir Davos. How the hell did I not put him down?
and I'm gonna wrap up with two of the greatest heels in the history of
I
heels.
feel like Davos could be like related.
Yeah, potentially.
I love
Ramsay and Tywin are also two characters that I loved because they were great bad guys. They were great, great villains. Ramsay's going to go down. I mean,
Not
you
Joffrey?
could stick Joffrey in there too. But like, Joffrey was just an annoying punk kid to me who just did a bunch of savage things because he didn't know any better.
I have to reiterate that I still have my necklace of Joffrey sitting on my makeup desk. He's on my lamp. I see him every day.
I mean, I put Ramsay ahead of him just because he was, I feel like he was more calculated in knowing exactly what he was doing. Like, just the whole flaying thing, just chopping off Theon's, manly parts. Like, and then sending them to his dad. Like, come on. Like, that's fucking crazy.
Well, the fact that his dad was like, fuck it, I don't care. He's not my son anymore.
And just like the way he would feed people to his hounds.
That's
like,
nuts.
Ramsay was so dope in a bad kind of way.
Yeah.
Like, it was great. And, Tywin was an amazing character as well. So who are some of the characters you love from Breaking Bad?
Walter White, of course. Jesse, Hank.
For the bad reasons, though.
Yes.
You loved him because he was a great villain.
He was great
Yes.
at being awful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I get so fired up. I wouldn't get fired up if he was a bad character.
Yeah.
He's fucking dope at being bad.
He's very good at being bad.
So, Skylar, she had some on and off moments for me.
Okay.
But I mean, overall, what would you do in this situation? I feel like,
that's a tough one.
she was good. Tuco, Tio, Gus, Mike.
I put down Walter, Jesse, Gus, Tuco, and Mike as my main core.
I put Marie as a last place. I mean, she helped break up the story.
I mean, Hank was awesome. Hank turned out like Hank was a good story because he started off as like this super annoying dude.
Where it was
And
like,
then-
oh God, stop.
And then once he got hurt, you kind of felt things shift with him. And like
Yes.
he's another character that I really enjoyed. So if you had to pick, this is another really hard thing to do. Better characters overall.
I can't answer that question.
Somebody's
Somebody's gonna get mad at me.
Even though Walter White was my favorite storyline, I don't think from top to bottom, Breaking Bad could compare with Game of Thrones characters from top to bottom.
I put Game of Thrones, but
Just overall, I feel like they've got more amazing, epic level characters between the good guys and the bad guys. Obviously, like, it's a really hard thing to compare because there's a whole world of people we're talking about with Game of Thrones versus basically one city.
a small community.
It's
Yeah.
basically a family and all the side characters that go along with it.
Yeah.
But here we are. Actually, you know what? Before we go to the moment of truth and we try to figure out which one we enjoyed better, let's read some fan comments.
Okay. Would you like me to go since you were having trouble reading the last time?
Well, I increased the size of everything.
Oh, okay.
So starting off with DMV 36132, I love both, but Breaking Bad got better every season, whereas the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones were rushed with a lot of plot holes / dumb writing, which is probably the consistent theme amongst the people who don't like Game of Thrones anymore.
Yeah. Don't say anymore. If you're going to throw it all away.
I know, that's hard. You want to read
How
the next
many
one?
years of your life, throw it away.
Especially if you were watching from the beginning. I
Right.
mean, but the people who are watching from the beginning are probably even more upset because of how it all went down.
Yeah. Yeah. S. Terrace 1. Tares. As much as I love Breaking Bad, I don't think it made as much of an impact to our culture as Game of Thrones has done. Yet the final season was meh at best, but it brought so much possibility to TV. It was a game changer, no doubt, and brought so many people into fantasy and TV. Hard choice, but for that reason, it's Game of Thrones for me.
And that's one of those things, that comment kind of hits on it. Game of Thrones is art, like, there is no debate. It is the most popular show that I've ever encountered in my entire life. Between all of the stuff that they sell, all of the,
my God.
like, it's like the Game of Thrones fan and being in the Game of Thrones world is a lifestyle.
Dude, it is a lifestyle.
Like between the books and all the stuff that's
merchandise,
like, the merch is just
guys
insane.
Sent us the most unique things I've ever seen
They
in my
sell
life.
Game of Thrones
Who
everything.
brought out a cookbook? Only Game of Thrones.
Which
they didn't have no Breaking Bad cookbook.
We got to do a cooking show on a Game of Thrones.
I don't think rattlesnake is readily available at the Whole Foods.
We'll figure it out.
Good Lord.
We'll figure it out.
I'm not eating any rattlesnake.
But yeah, I think that comment kind of, like, in terms of like an impact on society, I think Game of Thrones, I mean, definitely.
Look how many
Massive
people it's
impact.
brought into our lives.
Well, yeah, just us personally, you know, it's insane. Joni 1, Breaking Bad is her pick. Walt's story arc is by far the greatest we've seen in television. From nerdy high school teacher to sacrifice.
Scarface.
Oh, maybe I need some glasses.
Maybe.
That I shouldn't have trouble reading that. From nerdy high school teacher to Scarface, but never lost the heart completely. Yeah, it's true. Also, the writing in the show kept getting better and better, and we can't say the same about Game of Thrones.
That's true. I mean, see, I'm always, this is why people always say, like, oh, Nikki just goes along with what Steven says. It's like, I kind of do, because I'm a people pleaser. And sometimes, like, when you bring up another perspective, I'm like, yeah, well, that makes sense too.
We have very different opinions on Walter White.
Yes, we do.
So you don't always
No,
go.
we don't.
Yeah.
I think everything is his fault.
I mean, yes.
But I still love him.
But we have, like, you have a pure, like, even when the show is over, you have a pure hatred for the character.
For all the things that he did to his family.
I started leaning off of that a little bit.
No.
Based off of the way he wrapped up the show. For me a little bit.
You were still heated too.
Oh, of course. But, like, less.
Completely irresponsible. How could you do that to your wife, your children? Like, the amount of wrinkles you would give that poor woman.
Oh
Honestly, the stomach aches of worry and panic and not knowing if you were going to die today.
Mm-hmm.
You fucking douche. Don't you ever do that to me.
Next comment.
Divorce me, motherfucker. Oh, sorry. Where are we at? Ahmed Harris. Game of Thrones was imperfect, but I still love it more. Getting sucked into the world of Westeros and following all the various characters and their journeys, some of them tragic, still had me more enamored than Walt and his family.
And I think that's another major point, is like the whole fantasy versus reality thing. I think the people who love Game of Thrones over Breaking Bad probably love it for the fantasy aspect of it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I can understand that.
Mob, 12%. Breaking Bad is the pick. It ended absolutely perfectly and was amazing from start to finish. But also like I saw from other Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones from season 1 to 6 is peak for me. but it just went down so much the last 2 seasons, but I can't put it above Breaking Bad.
Solid. Scott T248. Game of Thrones was a better show to me. Sure, the last 2 seasons were kind of downers, but still better than 99% of TV shows with the production values and all that. Breaking Bad does get better every season, and the writing is more streamlined for the arcs of the characters. Do not get me wrong, Breaking Bad is a fantastic show, but not fantasy with dragons and White Walkers. Game of Thrones make me forget real world for a bit. Breaking Bad is set in the real world, so I guess that is why I put Game of Thrones over Breaking Bad, but both are great shows. I mean,
Yeah. I think that's a fair one.
What he said.
Patrick.
Because I put Game of Thrones, but I didn't want to say that.
We'll get there.
We'll
get to our picks. Hold on to it.
Hold on to it. I don't want anybody to get mad at me.
Hold on to it. Patrick writes, Breaking Bad because it stuck the landing. The quality of the writing in the show and the general story stayed great, maybe even got better as it ended. Game of Thrones started off awesome, but after season 4 started to decline, it still stayed great, but was slowly getting worse. It wasn't until season 8's inconsistency and general laziness that I saw it really go downhill. Wish it would have ended better.
Also same.
Yeah.
Nathan Dixon. I prefer Game of Thrones hands down. The writing on Breaking Bad is unmatched, but it is a very small story that does not capture my imagination the way Game of Thrones does. Breaking Bad also does not hold up as well as on repeat viewings, at least to me. I don't want to go live again in the Breaking Bad world the way I do Game of Thrones. The scope of Game of Thrones is incredible, spanning 2 continents, myriad characters, incredible turns of fortune, deep mythology going back thousands of years. It's an unmatched epic in filmed entertainment with beloved, unforgettable characters who are good, evil, and everything in between. If I could only watch one show for the rest of my life, it would be Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Mr. Slick with a great comment. Game of Thrones finale, grade school t-ball. Breaking Bad finale, New York Yankees.
Dang it, I'm not wearing my shirt.
Well done, Mr. Slick. Well done.
That was real slick.
That was such a good line in Breaking Bad. It was great.
That was.
Generic Soda versus Coca-Cola.
I mean, the dragons, the White Walkers, the fear.
Yeah.
The fear of the unknown. If you get in trouble in Breaking Bad, you know that there's only like 3 possible things that could happen to you. You get away with it, you get caught, or you die.
Before we get to our official picks, last comment.
Zach Ruggiero. I hope I'm saying that right. Game of Thrones is probably my favorite non-comedy series of all time. I mean, there's some funny stuff in there. Slow down.
Not a comedy.
I know, right? I never cared about characters in a show so much. It really wrecked my heartstrings more times than I can count. Not to mention giving me so many dark plot twists, which I love. And I seem to hate the final season less than everyone else. It certainly wasn't the best of the show, but I thought it was perfectly fine for a show I love so much.
And that's...
I mean...
You know, that's... I for the people who love Game of Thrones over Breaking Bad, I agree with everything. And for the people who like Breaking Bad more than Game of Thrones, I agree with all of them too.
I know.
Which is why this is such a hard thing to do. So the moment we knew... I knew we were doing this podcast the moment we started the podcast. Like the first time the idea came up of us doing this podcast, I knew we were going to do a Game of Thrones versus Breaking Bad. Just because I thought it would be a lot of fun. I thought it would be a lot of fun to read all of your guys' comments.
I love your comments regardless.
Yeah.
You guys are fucking
But this is
hilarious.
This is going to be a full-out war in the comments about which show is better. And I'm going to sit back, grab a little beer, and
be
enjoy them.
Be nice to me, damn it.
Be nice to everyone. But this is where I landed in terms of picking. And I'm going to admit right now, it's a total cop-out. I'm totally just copping out here.
Can I talk about mine?
No, I'm going to explain my thing first, and then you can share.
Sorry, fine. Sorry, go, please.
There is, in my mind, there is no debate. From top to bottom, Breaking Bad is the greatest show I have ever watched in my life. But it is not the show that I love the most. And that's kind of what the point of this is. Oh. You know,
That's a good way to put it.
I wrote some stuff down because I didn't want to forget what I wanted to write.
Okay.
Like specifically why is, so we've been done with both shows for 2 weeks. We've been done with Breaking Bad. We finished Breaking Bad a little bit before. I think we finished Breaking Bad the week of the war at Winterfell. So episode 3. Mm-hmm. So we've been done with Breaking Bad for a little over a month, and we've been done with Game of Thrones for 2 weeks. And the rewatch factor is the thing.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the comments, I realized, and this is not something I ever really thought of until I started doing my research and my homework on this specific topic. I'm really big into fantasy. Between Lord of the Rings,
that sounds dirty,
Harry Potter, and Star Wars, some of my favorite content is nothing to do with real life. I think because, and I started thinking about this, I'm like psychologizing myself here. I think because my real life is so hectic and wild and busy and crazy, and it's exactly the way that I love it, I think I enjoy the fantasy fake shit more than something that I could be happening across the street from us.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's no dragon across the street.
Oh, that'd be dope.
But I don't know.
Also terrifying.
But I don't know if there's like a meth lab across the street. Like, there's a lot of trailers in our town. I don't know if they're making meth out of it. Every time I see a tented house, I'm like, are they cooking meth in there? Like, that
actually,
shit
wasn't
is...
that apparently, that was the thing. We were talking to somebody and they're like,
we're
yeah,
talking to your
actually
dad
that.
about it.
Oh, yeah. And that was actually a thing. People actually went out and did that.
It all goes back to... I think I would have a completely different opinion of this if I was in my 20s, single with no family. Mm-hmm. But the 30-year-old version of me, married with kids, like the moment I had our first daughter, my emotional levels changed completely.
You've
like,
always been pretty sensitive, though.
But ever since the first child was born, like I've gotten more, like I wouldn't have cried during Endgame when I was 25, but like watching Endgame made me cry. Because of the father, like it was really about the Stark father-daughter thing.
Yeah.
That I would have laughed at. I've been like, I love you 3000 is fucking stupid. But today I'm like, oh, that's so sweet.
Spoiler alert.
Movie's been out a long time.
Spoiler alert.
But it's like the emotional impact of shows. Like even though I got real angry and I got fired up and I did more ranting during Breaking Bad, which I love to do. I love to rant. Just the impact of learning who John was, the impact of the Red Wedding, the impact of Hodor, the impact of like John having to take out Daenerys, like all of this stuff, just in terms of an emotional level, I'm going to acknowledge Breaking Bad as the better show.
Yeah. But
when it comes to, if I had to choose, like one of the comments said, if I have to choose a show to watch for the rest of my life, one show, I'm probably going to pick Game of Thrones.
So my whole thing is I don't like reality shows. I can't watch them. They give me anxiety. I'm like, I mean, okay, so the last reality show I used to watch was Little Women LA. I actually know, or I used to know Tara, the main character. She was so sweet when we first started hanging out. This was before Joe, before kids, before all that stuff, working in insurance. Like, to watch her now, it's like, it makes me upset, and then I can't get past it. It's like, oh my God, there's so much drama. These people are so awful to each other. Like, are people actually like this to each other? These bitches, for fucking real.
It's pretty wild. So
it's like, maybe Breaking Bad is too real. Because that's like shit that could, I don't know.
That stuff happens.
I don't know if there's some Gus out there though.
100% there is.
But, that's terrifying.
Without question there is.
That's fucking terrifying. Hijacking trains and shit.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it happens.
So, I mean, I love Game of Thrones for the reality escape.
Yeah, and
although, stop stabbing each other.
I mean, it is a really hard decision because, like I said off the top, it is without question the top 2 shows that we've ever watched. I mean, it's really in like a category by itself, and then everything else is below it in their own categories. I've always just called it 1A and 1B, which is where I'm ending this. It's my number 1A and 1B because I acknowledge Breaking Bad as the greatest show of all time.
It is.
But I pick Game of Thrones as my more favorite show. So like it's a tie. In my opinion, it's a tie. They're so different. They are like one of the comments said, they are two shows that should not be compared because they're completely different genres.
That was my struggle.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to get mad at me. Oh my God, how could you like not love Breaking Bad? And it's like, I do love Breaking Bad, but I also really love Game of Thrones.
It's also this new culture where if it's not the greatest thing of all time, you hated it.
The cancel culture?
Well, no, not just that, but like there's this one YouTuber I watch, John Campia, who basically does like a movie style podcast thing every single day.
Wow.
He ranked Endgame as like his third favorite MCU movie, and everyone jumped on him and be like, "Why do you hate it so much?" It's like if it's not number one, then you don't like it. But it's like in his top 5.
You know
he
what?
He still loves it.
That is true.
It doesn't have to be an all or nothing.
But I've noticed that in some of our comment sections sometimes. Like, oh my God, they hate it. I never said that ever. Yeah. I never said that.
I mean, it's an easy mindset that if you don't make it your favorite, that you don't like it. If it's not your favorite of all time, you hate it. It's just
that should be a pinned comment on every single video. Just because we have something to argue about doesn't mean we hate it.
Yeah. I love both these shows. I can't wait to hear, like, obviously we got a lot of comments on the community tab, but we want to keep this conversation going. Of course, if you are listening to this on any of the billion podcast distributors, it is great to be back on the podcast. I missed the 1 week off. I love the podcast. I love having this opportunity to talk about the things that we love. And we're going to have some fun ideas. I got a nice list of stuff that we're going to talk about. It's not all going to be TV show or movie related. We're going to dive deep into some of our personal shit.
Let's talk about hypothyroidism. I'm just kidding.
Let's not.
It's consuming my life right now.
But we do have a lot of fun ideas that are also still linked to movies and TV shows. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this. It was just the timing was too perfect. We were doing Game of Thrones recaps, obviously, and we're now watching Better Call Saul and Vikings, and both of those shows are still currently on TV.
Cobra Kai.
And we're watching Cobra Kai, it's going to have a 3rd season, so that is still airing as well. And it's just
amazing shows.
Those are shows that we could potentially do some podcasts on when we're wrapped up on them because they still exist.
I want to talk about Vikings all day.
That show has been spectacular. If you're into Vikings, go check out our reactions.
By the way, did we ever find out how to say Lagatha's name?
Yeah, it's like that.
It is Lagatha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, like we want to hear all of your comments. If you've ever got ideas or things that you want us to spend an hour talking about, let us know. We're open to all suggestions and all ideas. And like I said, if you are listening to us on any of the many podcast distributors, go find us on social media at NickySteveReact on Twitter and Instagram. Go hit us up. And if you're watching this on YouTube, leave some comments down below. We want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. Do you have any other thoughts on this topic?
No, sir.
This was exactly what I expected it to be. It was a hard conversation.
A lot of me flip-flopping?
A difficult conversation, but a lot of fun talking about our 2 favorite shows that we've ever watched. I think another fun topic might be ranking all the shows that we've reacted to, that we've finished or caught up on.
Going over a list of every single show that's ever been suggested.
Ooh, that's
a lot.
That's a lot. There's a lot.
We would be here all day.
A lot of shows have been requested.
Totes.
So yeah, that's kind of our thoughts. It was a lot of fun. Leave your thoughts or go find us on social media. That'll do it for episode 10 of the Stikker Podcast. We'll see you guys later.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Stikker Podcast with your hosts, Nicky and Steven. Follow them at NickySteveReact on Instagram and Twitter.